Welcome to The Missing Link, a podcast where crypto and insurance come together. I'm Dan Roberts, and my co-host is Danielle Wall-Elliott. Whether you're in crypto, traditional finance, or in need of a new podcast, The Missing Link will help you explore the vital role that insurance plays in crypto and how blockchain will disrupt insurance. Join us on our journey to find the missing link.
Oh man, the missing link. A missing link is really explaining how non-sovereign, decentralized money, what role that would play in a multipolar geopolitical world.
A framework that separates decentralized protocols from those that are not.
The first one for me is still clarity, and of course, like for me, honestly, from all businesses, that means regulatory clarity.
The missing link in the industry, to me, is always still education.
I think crypto is getting more efficient, and I hope that in this next cycle that's what we see.
Modifying the world standard to embed insurance within itself, so the yield itself would pay for its premium.
Everyone assumes that crypto is there as a tool for us, but I think it's going to become more of a tool for the wealth transfer between different AI systems that are employed by people.
We need a lot more clarity from regulators.
Like regulation across the main jurisdictions. So not only Bermuda, Singapore, the UK, but also the US, and then connect the high quality service providers to jump into the space.
More people. I think we're missing still the wider society recognizing that the assets are here to stay.
The vast majority of human society doesn't understand the harm and danger and loss that is occurring through monetary debasement.
Wow, 12 episodes in, that kind of compilation of everyone speaking, it gives me goosebumps. It makes me excited. So many amazing, epic guests in the industry that we've had on The Missing Link. And to just hear all their missing links kind of tied together like that, it's pretty incredible. A few themes in there as well.
Yeah, I think it took us 8 attempts to cut it down as well. People had many missing links, but it was really cool to get a snapshot of some top folks in the space, what's on their mind, see the key themes. Would love to dive in a little bit.
I think when we set out to do this podcast and we came up, I think you came up with the missing link. And I loved that idea of like, okay, it's not super specific blockchain, but obviously blockchains have these links. And we wanted to highlight insurance as obviously something that we at Names believe is missing in the industry for mass adoption. But we started this podcast to think, well, what else is out there? Like we can highlight, what it is that insurance could bring to the space or what crypto could bring to the traditional insurance world. But now we've been able to talk and have meaningful conversations with leaders in the space about what else really is the struggle that we face. We talked to people at conferences.
That's it. You definitely have this, it's just insurance. And surely if we have, risk mitigation and, proactive and reactive risk mitigation in that kind of insurance structure, it's also well thought through and thought out in an old industry that's got lots to offer, then, everything will follow. But obviously you start to build up this very broad 3D image of multiple different missing links, which has been fascinating to listen to, but also gives us a real sense of where the space is and what problems we need to go out and solve throughout this year. And there's so much going on that it seems like we have a good chance of having a productive year of tackling those. So it's been a nice reality check to do a macro gauge on what work is still left to be done outside of our insurance sphere that we wrap ourselves in.
That's right. And there's no surprise what the biggest one was, not only with our guest, but throughout the industry with conferences, webinars, things that we saw, lack of regulatory clarity being probably the biggest, missing link in the space. So, I want to ask you, Dan, to kind of elaborate on this. How can we work with regulators closely to ensure that we're getting not only, sensible regulation, but that we can work directly with those who are making the regulation, the laws that we need to adhere to.
Yeah, I think I counted 5 times it came up, and there was some that said just clarity as well, and so that may extend outside of regulation, but it wasn't very specific. And I think there has to be some credit. Well, there definitely should be some credit on the fact that I think in 2023 we did start to see some clarity in different ways. There was certainly a great bit of progress made with the UK. I know Policy Exchange brought out a decent paper that really put a stake in the ground for the UK and following big moves in Europe to. That really just, sentiment is important, and that they were really putting their voice and position behind this space, which, let's face it, has struggled in the past and still to some degree with PR images. Even companies are nervous about putting their voice behind this kind of technology and different asset classes on chain. And regulators, you would think, perhaps rightly so, are even more risk averse. But some of the largest onshore jurisdictions are starting to, put their flag in the ground as to how they see this as a huge opportunity for economic growth within their economies. I think another bit in the positive side was, we certainly see this with the work that we do in Bermuda is vertical specific regulation. So not just regulation over digital assets, but over digital assets in insurance. And I know that a number of others around private credit and so forth are starting to see more clarity there. Stable coins, I think, are probably up next. So there's a lot of positives. We've just had a lot of Bitcoin ETFs approved. So there's a move from the SEC that get a lot of criticism and have done so over the last couple of years. So there's definitely positives. But it doesn't mean that there isn't a pace and an accuracy that is still demanded and required from the regulators. Because I think one of the comments I liked was more people in that summary. There are lots of people moving in now that come from traditional industries that require this sort of clarity to build these services. We've seen such flaws in the past, and that's been because you can operate in this Wild West environment, and that seems to be changing. So lots to discuss.
I mean, we're seeing, you see someone like Coinbase, Kraken, some of those US specific and centric companies that have tried so hard to work with the regulators, and then especially in the US, and then just not finding that clarity. So then, they're going to different jurisdictions. And I feel like that is such a trend in this space. That's like global on-chain environment where we can operate 24/7. We don't have to think about borders, but then we do have to think about borders, especially in our regulations. So then you do this like geographical gymnastics as a business to go and say, okay, I'm going to have an entity here, I'm going to have an entity there. Some of the jurisdictions that I was thinking of as like highlighting, BVI has been very welcoming for tokens. So you see a lot of people kind of set up an entity there to run that part of their business. I think Singapore is attracting a lot of these DAOs. They're like, oh, we don't need an entity, but then you do need an entity. You want to set up accounts, you want to set up banks, you want to do anything. So, and then another one that sticks out is Hong Kong, requiring insurance for exchanges. Obviously, that one's cool for us. It's neat to see, I think I forget where, but like some people saying, oh, smart contracts must be audited. They're legislating this. You'd hope it just comes naturally in the industry. You'd hope that businesses are doing that and that people only want to interact with contracts that are audited and people only want to interact with that. And you want the market to kind of decide. But it is cool to see jurisdictions, taking a step up and making sensible legislation where it seems like they actually understand the technology and not just shunning it and seeing it as a competitor for their own fiat currencies and, just kind of being like, no, this isn't happening. I think that's been super promising. It feels like you can go and piece together and find somewhere that wants to welcome you and your business.
Yeah, and not just seeing it as a competitor to fiat currencies, but there seems to be a shift from trying to back the technology into existing regulation.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, it's totally been the case over the last 3-4 years. We've seen how it's become much, much, much more bespoke. And that was another piece in the policy exchange paper, which was, just around all of these very nuanced reasons for why updated bespoke regulation was needed. And people are starting to get that. And we see that firsthand with, the expertise that comes into the regulators that we work with. So it's such a key point, is that, when the internet came out and was starting to achieve this kind of adoption, you can't just come up with old laws to do it. And it's the same in digital assets. There's a new way, and we saw with things like custody and other arrangements, reporting, numbers, transparency, that the regulation didn't make sense. The questions that you were asked were like not
the Securities
even the
Act
right
of
questions.
1933 is somehow governing these on-chain assets.
Exactly. So there's a general good feel, and that's, if you asked us 2-3 years ago, it would be a very different sentiment. So, we got to pat ourselves on the back for and the regulators over the last couple of years. Let's see where it goes. Fingers crossed.
I don't typically pat regulators on the back, but
I know you're in a good mood or something.
I would.
But yeah, it's fascinating to watch, and it does seem to be a global conversation now where there's an openness of, okay, well, it's here to stay, so let's do it in a way that that works. And we've got to be cautious that, we're going to come up with against all the same, the same incentives and, negative sentiments and old attitudes and things. And but good progress seems to be going on. Another theme that I really enjoyed in the missing links that we've just heard is this almost battle between, do we need more education, or do we need the tools that we have now to just be better suited, better UIs, easier flows to be used by the masses? What gets the masses using these things? Is it constant rigorous education? Everyone's taking the the Ethereum course and all of that, or is it more that do you need to know about the intricacies of how the internet works to use Facebook? No, it's very intuitive. Mobile phones went from these cumbersome, devices to, well, you just press on the screen. I remember, teaching my grandmother how to use a phone, and it was like press menu, and she pressed on the screen. I was like, obviously the button below. It's become so easy that anyone can use it. That to me seems like, not that education is obviously not required, but we can still build these tools in really seamless ways where you don't even know you're using it, but you're benefiting from it.
I feel like it's a balance, because the one thing that gives me the most hope and excitement is my nieces and nephews, the young people around me. When I talk to them about crypto, when I talk to them about digital assets, they don't have any preconceived notions about, well, money's supposed to be this way. There's that clip where I love crypto people always share it. It's like Burger King started accepting Visa, and they're like, why would I use a credit card to pay for a burger? There's definitely, you fight the biggest battle with people who have done it a different way. Right. And so we almost I have so much hope and excitement for young people to start really adopting it. And they're going to be like, duh, everything is digital. Of course I can send money to someone across the world that I talk to or have met on TikTok or anything like that. So I think, I want it to be smooth and useful. Obviously we need a clean UI and UX to do it. But I think the education piece won't be as big of a hurdle for the next generation.
Yeah, I mean, we had Eric Voorhees in the last episode there. Always great to hear snippets from him. I'll paraphrase, but his piece was, the vast majority don't understand the risk of monetary debasement. And there is a core message around liberty and, self-sovereignty in the space. And I'm interested in how much of the population care about that or are educated enough about that to then care about it. Everyone knows how social media is ruining our minds, surely, and everyone knows how Facebook and these advertising models are kind of using us as the product, but they're still unbelievably
We still use it.
Products, yeah, all the time. And the argument's almost so overdone that you can't even bring it up with any decent outcome anymore. And it's the same in this space. Like, it's obviously captured a huge amount of the world's attention, and that seems to be getting bigger and bigger. But there are lots of reasons why you would want to use this technology beyond a very passionate, I don't want to reduce it like anarchist kind of, this is what is morally right, and there's a new way of designing money. Why wouldn't we want to lean into that?
Well, people don't want to think that their government has led them astray. People don't want to, I think they just don't want to assume bad intentions of people. And so they give their society the benefit of the doubt. And it's not until you have, one of my favorite episodes this year was Martin Karika from Mountain Protocol. And, him actually when when humans' money is actually not just like a little bit devalued every year and every day and all that, but week over week, I think he said it was like 200%, inflation just this year, or like even at less than a year. So that's when it becomes a true problem, where you actually can't store the value of what you're earning from your labor, from your work. Then you're really taking notice. And so I don't want it to come to that and the rest of the world. I hope that we are able to kind of realize it before that shit hits the fan moment.
Yeah. And, back kind of to the education bit is that, on your point of you have to feel the pain to then really search it out. And if things are kind of working for you, are you going to pay attention? We work with lots of insurance businesses and insurance folks, and, let's face it, there's not a huge amount of innovation, that can get you super excited in the insurance world, let's be honest. But the technology does feel like you just need to use it. Like, if we spend a lot of our time doing education and explaining what we do, and sometimes that makes people feel like it's more complicated than it is. And when you start using these tools, we'll get to an announcement later about Base, but you start to see the way that you can go into other environments where tools that have been built over the past decade are now in a really good position for lots of different users. So yeah, definitely lots of great progress. And the final one I wanted to pull out, which was mentioned twice, we started with probably the most boring but surprisingly interesting area of regulation. We had two mentions that we might not be, as humans, the biggest users of digital assets, but AI is now a force to be reckoned with, that may be using digital assets as a transacting currency. I think that was Dan and Eric. That seems to be a number of more episodes of The Missing Link to dive into that general topic. But who knows what's coming up in that whole space? It seems like this could be an asset class that is the only asset class that can be used by machines instead of people. I'm not quite sure if I have an opinion on whether that's an exciting thing or a terrifying thing yet. But it was interesting that came up not once but twice.
AI had a big year in 2023. Do you see that carrying over just as much in 2024 or more?
I think there'll be more than there was last year, but it loses the newness. So, it's like if you announce that you can have a conversation with a chat GPT and it comes back with pretty interesting results, you can now do that with images. The images are getting better. That's just touching the surface. The from zero to that, and there's been lots of AI stuff in the past, but that really was kind of a real new. There's a novelty to that. Again, not to reduce it. This year we'll continue to see it, but it's crazy how people get so used to these things so quickly.
Yeah. I'm seeing it pop up in now every day, tools that I use every day. Google search now gives you a quick AI blurb, and Canva, something like that will say magic right in it. So I do think almost what you're saying is there's a newness and a novelty, go to this specific place and use it. But now it's just going to be better integrated in all the tools that we use. And you almost just expect it in a way.
Yeah. We're so, used to anything and everything in this day and age, I think. So yeah, we've lost the novelty of whoa, all the possibilities. but it'll continue to be used for sure and continue to get better.
Well, if it uses crypto and can help promote the mass adoption of crypto, I praise you, my AI overlords.
Yeah.
Please.
Yeah. Shout out to the Daniel Suarez book called Damon and Freedom is the Sequel. Fascinating read if you're interested in the overlords of the AI world. Really would recommend that. That was my best read of 2023. Well, so speaking of missing links, starting with you, Danielle, a question is, what is your missing link? And you can't say insurance.
Okay, well, I think, I'm probably going to give like two that I think relate, but the first one is just time and maturity. I first got involved in the space in 2014, about to celebrate 10 years since I bought my first Bitcoin. And I just remember thinking that it would catch on a lot faster, especially just in the terms of like payments. So like I thought people would be paying for their coffees and paying for things, with Bitcoin. I thought that would really, I don't know. It just seemed like that was the hype. Like it's like, oh, this is this problem that it solves, like a great like dollar replacement. And then obviously you get the development of Ethereum, you get these stable coins, you kind of see, wow, it expanded way past what I ever could have conceived or imagined, but it's still maybe not quite in that mass adoption phase that I probably had thought it would be, in 2024, which seemed so far away. So I think just like time and maturity. And then that kind of leads me to this next one of, I want to see self-custody solutions. I want to see this technology being used in its full power. I think if we're just using crypto and we are almost what you said about the regulation, like if we're trying to fit it in these old boxes and just recreate what we have, but say it's blockchain, say it's digital, I have concerns about the CBDCs. I have concerns about, having something else happen like an FTX. That was such a black eye on the industry. That trickled down to so many businesses, even if you didn't have funds on FTX. It just has been such an uphill battle since then. And I would love to see us really dive deep into what this technology can truly do. So yeah, get a hardware wallet. Don't just put all your money on a exchange. I think they have their place, but we have to be sensible. And that goes to that education piece. We have to know what it is. Like if you're going to, I always love saying this too, my dad owned a comic book store growing up. And so, Spider-Man, with great power comes great responsibility. And I think that that's so key in this crypto world. So yeah, I just want to see us mature. I want to see the bad actors get out of here, people that just want to recreate more of the same. And I want us to really adopt these principles of decentralization, self-custody, really being our own bank, owning our own assets.
Love it. Yeah, we'll try and condense that down.
Oh yeah, put that in the word.
Yeah, no, that's great. I think I would say two as well. The first one is in a way, and I don't want to sound naive here, but would love a Men in Black reset on PR and the general image of the space.
Yeah.
A clean slate there, which is it's a hypothetical, but it's really just to say a lot of the mess and bad actors have been normal problems that you see in the centralized world. This is not, specific to crypto, and actually goes against what the core of the technology is trying to avoid. You might argue that because of the lack of regulation, you allow for some of this it's a space that allows for the bad acting. But I have conversations on a weekly basis of people saying that, it's still just used for drug money or something. And it's like, we're so far beyond that now. So there needs to be kind of a reset and therefore a highlight of the obvious benefits of the day.
Maybe we need some like good movies on like the successes or something. I don't know.
I know.
Something to like go into culture,
Always the crazy, things that went wrong. And they make for better documentaries or dramas, unfortunately.
Yeah.
We need some comedies and uplifting. And then, I think the second one, which is a little bit to your point, is, and we deal with this in the insurance world, is how can we integrate regulatory legal processes with technology in a way that it doesn't dampen the technology's utility.
Yeah.
And a cool innovation that we're starting to see more and more of, but I would love to see widespread of this, is your KYC attestations where you can use even a DEX, a decentralized exchange, in a KYC'd way. You could almost have DEXs that are purely decentralized, but still abiding by the laws that are required of centralized exchanges, because you can only use them if you meet the certain requirements that a centralized exchange would require of you.
Right.
And you're starting to see that across small companies as well as these larger businesses working towards that on a retail level and an institutional level. I think that's a great missing link. And also it's just an unbelievable burden in the user experience, is that KYC onboarding type flow. I think there's a couple of models out there that are really interesting, and someone getting that really clean and really right, and that becoming a mass adoption. It feeds into your sovereign identity as well.
Yeah.
Go and KYC yourself to the level that you are as your digital identity, and that allows you to use the services that are in the decentralized world.
I think it would even be cool to have, you could have multiple addresses have different identities. We're talking about this idea of like integrating AI. Like, couldn't you have almost like a credit score? You've seen that I've used these different services. I've paid my money back. I've paid on time, where it doesn't even have to be, I don't know, like tied to me, Danielle Wall Elliott, but like I could have 3 different crypto identities that don't even have my name, but I've built up a reputation and a trust. I've never interacted with, say, blacklisted addresses. I've never interacted with things like that. I think that could be a cool next phase of identity.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, and I remember similar things being spoken about, really early on, some of the promise of the space, and it's cool to see that so a certain amount of problems have been worked on now that we can get to some of these, bigger picture pieces that the initial introduction of this technology brought. So yeah, who knows what's to come? But I'd say KYC attestations and a Men in Black zapper. That's my cut.
I love it. All right. Well, we have to talk about insurance. We have to talk about names. So we're so excited for this year ahead. And one thing that we think that is still evolving in this space is both the insurance coverage of digital assets, smart contracts, the whole space, and then also how can the insurance industry tap into this alternative source of capital? How can we, as crypto holders, get more yield by investing in insurance as an asset class? And so, Dan, will you give us an update? What's new at Names, and what are our plans for this year?
Yeah, I mean, I think a great milestone for Names last year was our secondary trade. It really, A, was kind of the final flow that we kind of needed to tick off, but B, it encompasses the whole utility here, which is introducing insurance as an asset class with liquidity. The idea is you can be a specialist fund that's looking to back these kinds of risks, hold them for 3, 5, 10 years. It's a great asset class. Some of the biggest hedge funds in the world become the biggest reinsurance companies in the world. But you can provide liquidity to another cohort of investors who want access to this asset class. It's uncorrelated, actuarially priced, diversified, real world nature. But they only want access to it if there's a certain level of liquidity. Maybe they want to commit to a program that's priced over 5 years or even 1 year, and maybe they'll be there for that length of time, but maybe they won't, and they need that option. You can't commit up front if you have to be there for even 1 year. So that's something that doesn't really exist in the traditional space, and this technology and the way that we've modeled it with the regulatory and legal side is really allowing that. So yeah, for us, it's not just about those 2 pieces you mentioned of insurance in digital asset risk or a new source of capital in digital assets for the insurance sector, but it's also an opportunity for the traditional world of capital to access this risk in a way that either provides them liquidity or they can benefit by providing the liquidity. And that whole model came to a head last year for us.
It really shows that you can put these real world assets on chain tokenize them, and then you get that tradability. You get that full. I can just see the benefits. Like insurance is obviously what we're working on, but I can just see the benefits for so many real world assets. So it makes me so excited for this whole space when we see, hey, it actually worked. The thing that we have been trying to do actually worked. People saw the benefit. Both people came out ahead. The person that needed to sell their tokens and the person that bought them. So it's just like, wow, we really are delivering on what we've said we're going to.
Yeah, and it doesn't say that insurance as an asset class can now be just as liquid as equities. It just means that because you have the ability to trade in a minute at tiny commission, there's a new model for specialist funds, for market makers, for hedge funds to engage in this kind of asset class now. So that was a really cool thing from last year as a major part of our growth this year. We just today, actually, at the time of recording, announced our launch on Base, so the layer 2 from Coinbase. Really excited about that. Great demographic of users there. There's lots of institutional focus and specificity that we can work on over this year. We have our first program going live on Base, which is an industry loss warranty as this catastrophe risk. There's a great suite of tools there for your traditional folks that don't understand the technology. This stuff isn't 1 year old anymore. It's really been worked on and perfected over a good period of time. So we're excited to be on Base.
Well, shameless plug. Where would someone go to, participate in this, and what type of returns are they looking at if they do?
Yeah, so for the ILW, it's an 11% return. Most of our programs are that kind of, mid to high teens is the kind of joke that we hate. But yeah, it's a 12 to 18 normal distribution of returns. Potential for not just your insurance returns, which gives you that range, but the nature of insurance is that you can earn investment returns as well, market rate, etc. So that's definitely to come throughout this year. Where to go? Names.com. We've built the application. It's all very accessible there. You can onboard yourself and go and assess these different programs. So definitely come and say hello at our site. We're really excited for this year ahead. I think we've achieved a lot in a difficult year for the space, 2023. So it's a great Happy New Year to everyone. A very big thank you to all of our guests that we had that you saw a brief snippet of. I really enjoyed the conversations that we had and hosting with you, Danielle, of course.
Thank you. Yes, that was so awesome. I would get so fired up after each one of those episodes. I'd be like, oh my God, that was so good. So I hope our guests have that same, feeling after they listen, our listeners have the same feeling, after they listen.
Yeah, do feel free to reach out. Who do you want to hear from? We're going to be a bit more specific around topics this year. So not just diving into the guests and their backgrounds, but specific topics so we can go a bit deeper in those different areas. AI hiring us all and otherwise. But yeah, it's been a great year. We're excited for 2024. Listen out for the next episode. Thank you and Happy New Year.
Don't forget to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. Thanks, everyone.
We're one step closer to finding the missing link. If you enjoy our show, please rate and review us wherever you get your podcast. And be sure to come back next month. Until then, we are the missing link.